What's up everyone, welcome back, Patrick here. In this next video, we're told that you're creating a custom drink where the ratio of apple juice to orange juice to club soda is 7 to 5 to 3. And based on that information, we have 3 questions here. So if you want the total to be 4.5 liters, how much of each component should be mixed? If you have 1.2 liters of club soda, how much apple and orange juice would you mix with it? Number 3, if the total amount of apple juice and orange juice in the mix is 2.4 liters, how much club soda is there? So different types of variations of examples or questions that you get dealing with a ratio with 3 components. So starting with number 1, we're told that the total of the drink is going to be 4.5 liters, and then how much of each component of the 3 components should you mix? Now, before getting into the actual questions, I want to deal with this ratio a little bit. And what I'm going to do, so this is what? Apple juice to orange juice to club soda. What I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what is the percentage or the fraction of the drink that each of these components takes up. Because this is a ratio here, but we can convert it to be a fraction or a percentage for each component. So we can find out how much of the drink is going to be apple juice. We can't figure that out from just looking at this. What we would have to do is we would have to take the amount of apple juice in the ratio, this 7 here, and then put it over the sum of these. So 7 plus 5 plus 3, which would give us 15. So that means that 7/15 of the drink is going to be apple juice. So that's the percentage of the drink that's going to be apple juice. And then we can do the same thing with orange juice. We can take the 5 and put it over the total, 15. And then 5 over 15 simplifies to 1 over 3. So 1/3 of the drink has to be orange juice, no matter what the amount that you're mixing is. And then the club soda, I'll just put club over here, is going to be 3 over 15. And that simplifies to 1 over 5. So 7/15 of the drink is apple juice, 1/3 of the drink is going to be orange juice, 1/5 of the drink is going to be club soda. And then you can check these values, you can add these up, and they should always add up to 100%, or in terms of fractions, add up to 1. And notice that if you do add them up, they do add up to 1, right? So 7 plus 5 plus 3 is 15, over 15 would simplify to 1. So that's how you could take a ratio and then find out the percentage of each component. And so personally, that's what I like to do. And then it's a lot easier to use these fractions in these questions. So we're told that the total is 4.5 liters. Now, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to convert this 4.5 liters to 4,500 milliliters just to get more precise value. You don't necessarily have to do that, or you can convert it to milliliters, and then once you get that value, you convert it back to liters by dividing whatever values you get by 1,000. If maybe it's a multiple choice question and the answers are in liters. Another way to, another thing I want to mention is, another way to look at these fractions is this here is like the ratio of apple juice to the total mix, 7 to 15. That's actually another way to look at it. Or the orange juice to the total is 5 to 15, or 1 to 3. Or the club soda to the total is 1 to 5. So that's another way to look at it. And then you can use either these fractions or these ratios. You can take this, so for example, so this is just for the overall information here, and now I'm going to get into actually doing number 1. So notice how number 1, we're told the total is going to be 4,500 milliliters. So what we can do, if we want to find out how much of that is going to be apple juice, we can use this ratio. So we can go 7 over 15 equals x over 4,500 milliliters, like that. And then we could solve for this x here, and then what that's going to give us is the amount of apple juice in that 4,500 milliliters. So the way we would solve here is we can just cross multiply. So 7 times 4,500 would give us 31,500, and then 15 times x gives us 15x. Divide both sides by 15, x would end up being 2,100 milliliters. Or we can say, if you want to convert that to liters, you could divide it by 1,000, so you'd get 2.1 liters of apple juice has to be in the mix. Right? Another way we could have done this is we could have just took this fraction of apple juice, 7 over 15, and then multiplied it by the 4.5 liters or the 4,500. You'd get that same value. So whichever way you want to do it. But the answer to this is 2.1 liters has to be apple juice. Right? So that's one of the components. And so we would go through each of these components separately. So now what we can do is let's find out the amount of orange juice. So we'd go, the ratio of orange juice to the total is 1 over 3. We're solving for x, and we know the total is 4,500. So cross multiplying, 4,500 times 1 is 4,500. Then we'll have 3x, divide both sides by 3, we get 1,500. This is milliliters, or 1.5 liters. So 1.5 liters, I'll put the answers up here, is going to be orange juice. And then the club soda, different ways we can do it. We can actually just total these up if we want. So this would end up being what? 3.6 liters in total. 4.5 liters minus 3.6 liters would give us 0.9 liters, or 900 milliliters of club soda. And so those are the final answers for number 1. And then this 900 milliliters, we could have also gone with this ratio. So we could have said 1 over 5 equals x over 4,500. Cross multiply, we would end up with 5x equals 4,500. Divide both sides by 5, we get that 900 milliliters, or 0.9 liters, like that, if we divided it by 1,000 to convert it. Right? And again, we could have also took the 1 over 5, multiplied it by the 4,500 to get the 900. So different ways you can sort of go about it. It's all the same algebra in the end, but whichever way you see fit, whichever way you're comfortable, just make sure that you're getting the same value. So these are the answers for number 1. Now number 2 says if you have 1.2 liters of club soda, how much apple and orange juice would you mix with it? So for this question again, I'm going to use those fractions, those percentages that we came up with for the components. And in this particular case, we're told that the drink's going to have 1.2 liters of club soda. And we know that 1/5 of the total drink is always going to be club soda. So what we can do is we can use this ratio. So we got the club soda to the total is 1 over 5. It's always going to be in that ratio. So what we can do is we can find out, if we know that the club soda is 1.2 liters, we can find out what's the total amount of the drink going to be. And then once we know the total amount of the drink, we can follow the same process as we did in number 1 to find the amount of apple juice and orange juice. And so here, notice we have this equation. We can cross multiply. 1 times x is x, and then 5 times 1.2 gives us 6 liters, or 6,000 milliliters. Right, so I'm actually going to use the 6,000 milliliters to solve for these, and then I'll convert it to liters after. Right, another way we could have done this to get this amount for the total is we know that the total amount times 1 over 5, 1/5 of the total is going to be the amount of club soda, which is 1.2 liters. So we also could have isolated for this total by dividing both sides by 1 over 5. So we'd have 1.2 divided by 1 over 5. And then having 1.2 in a decimal, so not the most proper format here. The 1.2 we can maybe convert to like, let me do it over here. 1.2 is like, what, 12 over 10, which is 6 over 5. So we'd have, this is like 6 over 5 divided by 1 over 5, which is like multiplying by 5 over 1. Right, and then those 5's cancel out and you end up with that 6 as well. So that's another way you could have gone about it. Usually I'm doing it this way over here because I just personally like cross multiplying versus dealing with dividing with fractions. But whichever way you do it, again, just make sure you're getting the same values. So the total in this case is 6 liters. But that doesn't answer our question because they're asking how much apple and orange juice should you mix with it. Well, now that we have the total, we know that the ratio of apple juice to the total is 7 over 15. So we could solve for x, knowing that we got 6 liters. I'll convert it to 6,000 milliliters. And now we could cross multiply. So 6,000 times 7 gives us 42,000. And then we'd end up with 15x, like that. And then to isolate for the x, we could just divide both sides by 15. And then x would end up being 2,800. This is milliliters, which converts to 2.8 liters. So that's the amount of apple juice that would be there. So the apple juice would be 2.8 liters or 2,800 milliliters. Then we just follow the same process for the orange juice. So we would just put 1 over 3 over here. And then we'd end up with 3x equals 6,000. Divide both sides by 3, 2,000 milliliters or 2 liters of orange juice. Okay, so this would be 2 liters over here. Then you could check your answer. Notice 2.8 plus 2 plus 1.2 gives us a total of 6 liters that we got before. Okay, so that's what the solution would be. And then you want to be careful. Maybe if this is a multiple choice question, they may ask, here they ask how much apple and orange juice was mixed. So they would be separate values, but sometimes they may ask for the total of apple and orange juice, so you would add these two, or maybe the total of apple juice and club soda, or maybe the total overall. So just read the questions very carefully. And then finally, number 3, we're told if the total amount of apple and orange juice in the mix is 2.4 liters, how much club soda is there? So in this case, so we have the total amount of the drink. So we have apple juice, we have orange juice, and then we have club soda. What they're giving us is the total amount of these two, which is 2.4 liters. And so then we have to solve for the amount of club soda that's going to be there. So how are we going to do that? Because these ratios, these fractions here, deal with each component separately. And so what we would have to do is we'd have to actually add up these two fractions of apple and orange juice. And then what we would end up with is a ratio of apple juice and orange juice to the total. And then we could work with that. Now be careful here. What you don't want to do is go back to this ratio and then just add the 7 and the 5. That could be a common mistake. So for example, you would ignore the 3 and then you would say, okay, 7/12 is apple juice and then 5/12 is orange juice, right? That doesn't make sense because it doesn't correspond with these values that we got with before. The 3 is still important there. So they gave us information about the apple and orange juice total, but you don't want to use this ratio or just the 7 and 5 and ignore the 3. You want to use these fractions that we got before. And so if you wanted to get this ratio here, what you would do is you would add those two fractions. So we'd have 7 over 15 plus 1 over 3, which would be 7 over 15 plus 5 over 15, which would be 12 over 15, which would give us, divide both the numerator and denominator by 3, 4 over 5. So the apple juice, orange juice total to the total of the whole drink is 4 over 5, like that. So we combine these two. And so now what we can do is we can use this ratio and the 2.4 liters. We know this is going to be 2.4 liters. We can solve for the total. Then once we have the total, we can find out how much of that is going to be club soda. Right? So it's just using these in whichever way. You got to be flexible depending on what they give you in the question. But once you have these, once you take this ratio and you convert it to these, it's not too bad. So 2.4 liters, let's convert that to milliliters. So this would be 2,400 over here. And then we're going to solve for x. And this x that we're going to get is going to be the total amount. So what we can do here, cross multiply, so 4 times x is 4x, and then 5 times 2,400 would give us 12,000. Then divide both sides by 4, x would end up being 3,000 milliliters, or 3 liters. That's not the answer though, that's the total amount of the drink. That's this over here. So actually with the club soda, we can just take 3 liters, subtract 2.4 liters, which would give us 0.6 liters, or 600 milliliters. So that's actually the answer. But another way you could have got this is you could have took now the total, the 3 liters, and then use this fraction. So 1 over 5 equals the amount of club soda to the total, 3 liters, right? So then we'd have 3 times 1 is 3, then we'd have 5x, then we divide both sides by 5, x would end up being 0.6. Remember, this was in liters, I put the liters here, but if you put 3,000, then you'd end up with 600 over here. Right, so whichever way you do it, final answer for number 3 is 0.6 liters or 600 milliliters of club soda. Right, so when you get a question like this, again, personally what I do, I take the ratio, convert it to these fractions here, and then I use the fractions to answer whatever is asked.